in.
She is here. I'll make her a panelist right now.
Yeah, excellent. And I'm going to not talk for half a second. There we go. Okay. So, good afternoon. I'm Jenny Farber, Chair of the 141 Portanimicut Task Force, and I am going to call the October 22nd, 2020 meeting to order. We're meeting in a Zoom webinar format, and this meeting is live streaming on YouTube. The public, known as the attendees, are muted, but will be admitted during public comment, and we'll tell you how to do that, how that's going to happen at the time. So I'm going to do attendance. First, we have John Janelle, ex officio, non-voting, and he is our conservation agent.
Good afternoon.
Russ Holden.
Present.
Phil, Suzanne Phillips.
Here.
Hi, Suzanne. Kayleen Rosado.
Hi.
And Jack, I'm sorry, you weren't on my list because I didn't realize you were coming. So Jack Katzik.
Here.
Okay, so welcome everybody. The first order of business today is to review our second ranking spreadsheet, and John kindly put both the one we did 2 weeks ago and this week's in our packet. And I think, John, you're going to bring those up on the screen and
Yeah, so I'll start screen sharing. I mean, this is the one that we reviewed last time. So everyone's got that, but we recirculated table 2, which didn't have, if I toggle, didn't have some of the categories that scored poorly, which were in red. So we only carried over 2 of those to our second effort, which was educational classes and the voting instructional classes. And we rescored. So we rescored, and you know, just this is another way to look at this stuff, guys. There's not much to describe here. It's self-explanatory, but some of the lower impact, obvious land uses for conservation property still bubbled up to the top. The second cut of this was really nothing was building dependent. This was a non-building dependent world, but it didn't really shuffle the deck much that I was able to see. So I don't know if anyone had any different feelings about seeing the totals together with the packet. So,
well, I think the first thing that jumps out is because we defined the difference between beaching and swimming dropped off.
yeah, and I think we're probably going to be recommending that this not be water quality tested as a bathing beach or advertised as such.
Right. I don't think that was a surprise to anybody. And it is interesting that the farther we got down the list, the more divergent our opinions become. But the first, the first 2 sections are pretty tight. Does anybody else have thoughts or comments on this? I think it's a great organic way to start to build, if not consensus, at least a profile of where our conservation values are. Anybody?
Well, Jenny, since
I'm just curious about fishing. It went from a 10 to a 14.
I think that was on the basis of Kayleen's concerns about fishing tackle, line and gear littering the beach.
Okay.
Is that correct, Kayleen?
Yeah, yep. And there's, they can still fish at the town landing And I don't think it will really affect the beach, but I'm just picturing, fishing hooks and line and stuff, accidentally left behind or lost or whatever. And if people are down there walking in bare feet, and
Yeah.
it's not that they can't fish in the area, just maybe not the beach.
Yeah, just maybe, yeah. I don't think that's a bad idea. And so I know that I adjusted my score on the basis of your comments.
Yeah, I adjusted mine on the kayak storage as well. And if the recreational department's going to take care of that, then I'm for it. If not, then I'm not. So I kind of gave that a 3.
Okay, so I'm gonna, I'll speak to that, I guess, for a minute, because REC came in to talk to Conservation Commission again on Tuesday, and will be coming in 2 weeks from last Tuesday with a more a defined proposal. But apparently there is an agreement between Natural Resources and RAC about managing the kayaks. And if I remember correctly, RAC is setting up a 501(c)(3), Friends of RAC, who will be handling the management, the rules, the kayaks, and then administratively that'll be Natural Resources. So it looks like that's moving forward smoothly.
Will they also be taking care of the dinghy storage or just kayaks?
No,
Okay.
that's on us.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on us. And so they will be doing the bike racks,
Okay.
kayaks. And if it ever comes to this, perhaps interpretive signage, but there's now multiple groups in town that are working on signage. And the last we heard from George Meservey this afternoon, right, John, was that we are all going to try to work together to have some consistent policy and make sure we're not overlapping. John, do you want to say more?
No, I mean, I would hate to see fishing prohibited. I mean, I don't think we do that in any other conservation areas. Usually it's more a presence of fish that drives the activity. And I don't know if that exists down here.
If we're silent on fishing, what does that mean?
Well, no, and we allow it. We allow it. So like all these areas, all these uses on table 2 aren't ones that they're all allowed. They're all allowed. So, ultimately when we get into, the outline up next, we're going to be recommending some of these be included as allowed uses and prohibited uses on the property. I could look at what we do for fishing, like at Kent's and stuff like that. I know it's, kind of popular in the early part of the season, but then once you get into the heat of summer, it's less popular. So
maybe you could do that. I don't know.
If I go back to table 1, it's like some of these we're not going to be recommending. We're not going to be recommending a satellite harbor master's office based on your ranking.
Right.
We wouldn't be recommending a lecture room and shellfishing classes or storage of the boating miscellaneous stuff. But when you get down to the second table here, there's really these 3 that were over 15 in total rank. We're not going to be recommending swimming because of the regulatory requirements that go along with it. And you may choose to not recommend classes or some type of, assembly that's over, groups of 10 or 20 where we know we got a parking crunch. And it appears you might not want to recommend any kind of deck or observation deck, whether it's, the old foundation or some type of sitting deck or whatever. But the rest of it, I think is on the table based that it's all fairly strong priority for most of you. But we can, talk more about that as we start to draft out recommended uses for the property.
Okay. Suzanne, it's nice to see you. Or Phil, it's nice to see you. I was just looking to see if anybody's in there. Did we want to talk a little bit about the viewing and observation deck? I know John just said that we could talk about it more, but if there's not going to be a foundation on the property, and that's why there would be a foundation, then we could begin to move forward with site plan issues. Or would we rather just let that go for another couple of weeks? Any thought?
Yeah, if we're gonna take the building down, then there's no point in having an observation deck, I don't think.
Well, it looks like we are slowly coming to the conclusion, just using our priority list, that the building is going to come down. So,
That's-
I would
That's
agree
what
with,
I would.
would that change your number, Jack?
Oh, yeah, that was always building dependent as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't think you got to worry about any votes now. But yeah, I think so we do the ranking exercise. It's like, yeah, you guys, again, you're gonna be making recommendations here
Right.
for land management as well as probably some implementation items.
Okay.
And the conscom will have to decide what to do with this building. But as you rank, it's clear that you guys aren't putting great significance on it, at least from me watching
Right.
you guys score these things.
I forget that, that we are making a recommendation, and it is ultimately the Conservation Commission's decision.
Yeah, and on the little things like the deck and stuff, I know we're going to talk next about, getting out there, and we have some site sketches from Russ that I think hopefully we could do a lot more of that type of activity too in the next couple of meetings. But this stuff's going to start to evolve here now pretty quick. So you don't have to vote it or something, but clearly you guys don't value it. You do
Right.
not value it.
Right, it is clearly moving in that direction. I keep looking to see if we have participants, attendees, and we do not. So I will not have a public comment at this time. So the next thing is to discuss a date for a site visit. I'm inclined to ask if we could do it before a meeting, just because, but Kayleen, you're still teaching, yes?
Yes.
And Russ is still working.
I can leave anytime.
Kayleen.
Well, I can't.
Yeah, Kayleen, yeah.
Well, I can.
Right, so,
I can be here, by 3, if you
Oh,
want to meet
that's
at
good.
3 and then have the meeting after that.
would that work for you, Jack?
Sure.
How about you, Phil? I think
My work schedule depends on the tide, so it depends what day and what tide.
Love
do you
that.
have a tide chart handy?
Well, I could look it up, yes.
It'd be 2 weeks from today, which is probably a full moon tide.
No, it's what time when tide is. Jeannie, I can't look it up in the next 30
Okay,
seconds.
that's fine. Could we tentatively set 3 o'clock on, it would be November
10, 20,
5th.
yeah,
5th,
11/5.
right? And if for some reason we need to change it, Phil, let us know.
I didn't hear the date because a couple people were talking. November what?
Again,
Yes,
again,
November 5th.
Yeah.
Thursday, November 5th. which I believe is our next meeting.
And for Phil, who's listening, I mean, I pulled up a Pleasant Bay tide chart. I'm not sure that's the one you work off of, but there is a low fill at 11:18 a.m. that day. So you'd be on the flood part of the tide if that works for your work schedule.
It's not Pleasant Bay. It's probably okay. I don't even have the chart in front of me. I can't deal with this right now.
Okay, we'll
I'll let you know.
let us know. Let us know. Hopefully that'll work. And if not, we'll sit down with you and figure out the tide charts. Okay, so review an outline for a draft management plan final report. John?
So I mean, I just shared an outline of not a final report, but more of a land management plan, basically one of our last ones. And I thought I'd just take a few minutes and just go over. I mean, this is what ultimately will be recommended by this group for the CONSCOM, and it'll be almost, I think, and the office will work hopefully with you guys to put together a draft running up to that joint meeting I anticipate with the Conservation Commission before your final meeting. So, but it's in front of you is outline form, and it's pretty easy. Total length of these things usually it's not very long. So we're not talking about a voluminous document. We're talking about 3 to 5 pages typically for these conservation areas, and it starts with an overview of the land. We'll put that together for you in draft, but that's a little bit about not only where the parcel is, but what it is and what it consists of. Salt marsh, upland, flood zone, velocity zone in this case, single family home in this case. We'll go over how much we paid for it and when we bought it, and we'll go over why we bought it. And those are all pretty easy things. Then we usually carry a history component. So last meeting we reviewed a basic draft history, file history at the office. Christina from our office put together. And then this week we also circulated some historic history. And I think we could bring the two of those together and provide a good little history segment for the piece. And again, everyone's going to get a chance to comment on this. I mean, I'm only offering to put it together as a draft document, Jenny, but if anyone wishes to work with the office on this, we're happy to do that with you or all of you.
Okay.
Mission of a management plan is pretty traditional across some of these land management plans. The Conservation Commission has a kind of a conservation mission and mandate. It involves advancing and promoting our allowed uses on this property consistent with how we acquired it and what the funds for. So this is kind of I'll show this, I'll put this in words for you at some point soon, but this is a general mission statement that usually advances this parcel for the enjoyment of the residents of Orleans.
Okay.
All plans have objectives. I once had someone tell me if the mission was winning the game, the objection would be the touchdown or the first down versus the touchdown, but you can look at it any way you want to. But these objectives will be kind of more specific to 141 Portanimicut Road. So whether that's an area where you want to promote the salt waterfront access, have some uniqueness on this parcel, but also have some generic objectives that are applied to all of our parcels. For example, remaining consistent with our conservation, recreation, and open space plan that was last done in 2006, and it has some goals about accessibility and public use and enjoyment of these properties.
Okay.
And also, sometimes you can consider doing stuff with the natural components of the property, whether it's you want to preserve native plants and eradicate invasive plants. That's an objective, so we can discuss some more specific objectives to 141. Some of you guys might have some of your own, and I'd love to actually hear from you. So the objectives are really a little bit of both. They're both property specific, but also general conservation minded kind of spirit. The land uses is a component where we usually kind of transitions over to trailheads on some of these properties, but the land uses are what you've been kind of looking at and ranking as an exercise. And ultimately, you would want to recommend some land uses for this property to your Conservation Commission. And then they would then consider them, whatever it is you're recommending, and carry them in the final land management plan for this property.
Okay.
You know, we've gone over bird watching, picnicking, scenic viewing, shore fishing, and a bunch of other land uses. But so we will use that ranking exercise to come down on this. So I guess this will have to make it or not. So I guess there will, Ginny, you can have one more discussion if, you know, between those two tables that we used to drill down on some consensus for land use. That is when you would, you know, include or exclude anything that was on those in this section of that final report or land plan. Next up, usually all these plans, as we buy these properties, do have some implementation actions. And this site is not without needing some of those. Now, this will be kind of the key thing. So like, for example, what do you do with the building? You might want to, you will need to be recommending a position to the CONSCOM on what to do with the building. You will also need to probably be recommending to the Conservation Commission what to do with the site. And I know we're going to meet on site, and the site improvements are going to be talked about. You know, some site concepts will be talked about later today, but you might have some specific recommendations on what to do with this site.
Okay.
You guys have talked about trail work and access early on. I know that's an important thing to promote for this property, for this group. And to the extent a path or some change in the path network or parking or development of parking, all these are implementation actions that you're going to kind of want to bullet out. And these don't really have a place in all land management plans, but in the case of an initial purchase of a property, one property manager or the commission who's going to be responsible for the property generally going to be aware that some of these are going to come along with a new purchase because you're going to want to do something. So that's a lot of, there's going to be a lot of specifics here, Ginny, that we'll need to hear from the task force on what to include or exclude. And then we have some kind of boilerplate language on responsibility for management and maintenance. CONSCOM is responsible for the management. DPW is our responsible maintenance arm. And we'll offer a closing statement and an appendix that it'll usually include the deed and perhaps the town meeting articles and the doings in an appendice for future readers to see and have as part of it. So that's basically how these go. And then when I shared the outline of the land management plan, I also kind of consulted the charge again, because you know, task 4, you are to prepare a report that'll serve as an outline for a land management plan. I think your outline is going to be, it can be polished to the point where it's almost a draft land management plan for the commission to consider, and that's fine. That'd be actually great. We might as well do it, start it now, and then the commission, the joint meeting with the commission, they'd have the opportunity to add, subtract, or polish. But you also owe them a final report, and I think that final report should share any other information, or at least a write-up of information that we considered. You know, the ranking tables, I guess, can be shared, but we do need to also provide a report at some point, which could be, it just needs to be brief enough to describe the process we work through to get
So
to.
synopsis in the minutes, or
I'm almost envisioning like a long cover letter, or
okay.
it's more than, it does have to be a report, so it's not as succinct as a letter, but, and Christina and I can go back through the record to see and try to summarize the steps you guys worked through. I mean, your agendas tell a story, and your packet material backs up that story. And we would try to need to summarize that to share with the commission in a succinct format what you guys did in order to come up with that plan that you're ultimately going to present at this future joint meeting.
Yeah.
So just trying to, give you guys some glimpse of the end game here. Is we got to put this stuff together and go have that joint meeting. I mean, I don't want to jump ahead, but like, I know that you had scheduled a bunch of meetings up until December 17th, Jenny.
I think up until, yes, the Christmas break, the holiday.
So that's 1, 2, 3, that's 4 meetings. So, and I know we want to do an onsite, and we have some writing to do, and we have some voting to do. And so I think I would challenge you, let's fit it to some schedule at some point here soon so we can get into that joint meeting setting.
Personally, what I'd like to do is make sure we all get out there on site as soon as we can. And then perhaps at the next meeting, make sure that our priorities are still the same based on the on-site, and take a vote on what we want to do with the building, or what we're going to recommend to do with the building, which again is a recommendation to Conservation Commission. And then from there, we can start to put together the uses, we can put together the implementation actions, and we can hone down on the site plan more. And so I think that we could definitely finish up before Christmas. Any comments from the task force on what John had to say, or on a potential schedule? Jack?
One thing, John, are we required, or will we propose a budget for anything we're going to do?
Thanks,
In the
Jack.
reports of Conscom?
Yeah, so your charge did not require you to propose a budget. So no, you're not required to.
But we do have some estimates available as part of the process we went through. So
Right, and that's the kind of material that I would like to include in the report side versus the draft land management side.
right.
Okay.
Russ, did you want to say something?
I don't know where this fits in, but do we have to make this property handicap accessible?
Not if there is not a building there.
No, we don't. We don't. We do have 2 that are accessible, amongst this being the 15th that are publicly open.
So we don't have to, but we could, I think. Though that
Yeah.
bank is
I was thinking of the path to the beach. Do we have to make it so that a wheelchair can go down it? Do we have to have those
not,
wheelchairs available?
no, do not. No, we don't. I don't know if that covers us for the parking. Do you, John?
I don't know. I could look into the parking
We
requirements.
might want to know whether we would have to provide a handicap spot, because that's,
I'm going to study it generally,
That's
and
an
Russ's initial question,
yeah.
accessibility
Yeah,
requirements.
accessibility, okay. Phil, do you have anything? Phil, you're muted if you're speaking.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you, yes.
I still have a little bit of problem with our entire process and the limited number of people on the task force and where each of us was from. And I think some of our conclusions are following naturally from the group. And that's okay, but it disturbs me that what is going to get presented to the CONSCOM will not include other options that I think more people in town might want to at least hear about and have some say on.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what to do about that. The other issue was, and I am still having a little trouble with Zoom meetings, and I had one related for work right before this, so I'm a little bit tired
I'm
right
sorry.
now. But when we were talking about the kayak storage and the rack and the racks and the agreement with DP, with Natural Resources and the Recreational Committee, I think it's really important that people at CONSCOM delve a little bit into the details, because I talked to Nate the other day. We had a meeting and this came up, and Natural Resources does the administrative work to register dinghies, for example, and he was talking about doing that for kayaks, but the department is not able to undertake real management of kayaks. And I tried to say this before, and the minutes said, oh, I was just talking about it wouldn't look good, but at the racks, but that's not the main issue. Some of the issues are that if kayaks aren't labeled with the name and a phone number of an owner and they show up out in the bay, which sometimes happens just because the high tide came along or somebody took it off the rack and didn't put it back, et cetera, it causes a emergency response that has to happen because the people out in the water, the harbor master people, have to go and check out if somebody sees a floating kayak, because they don't know whether somebody was in it and something happened to them. So this is some of the management. And Nate keeps talking about having a kayak club or, some kind of organization. And I haven't yet heard from, and I did have communication with Ann Sigsby and saw a brief thing about their proposal, and we're going to bring it up at Shellfish Waterways at our next meeting and so on. And there might be some more information, and maybe this is getting worked on, but right now it seems a little vague and a little tenuous and relying a little bit too much on staff who just do not have the time and money to take care of the problem the way it should be. And some other towns are having problems with this. It's a lot of work. And so I just want to throw that out there for people to keep in mind.
Thank you, Phil. It is my understanding after another meeting with RAC and discussions with Mike Brink, who's the Conservation Commission liaison, and I've had several discussions with Nate, that RAC is putting together a 501(c)(3) that will establish management practices, enforcement, and that basically what will happen through the Natural Resources Office is that they will handle stickers, just like they do for moorings and other things, and that that Natural Resources role will be limited to the mailings and back and forth. So that was the latest we heard on Tuesday, and they've been meeting, as far as I can tell, 2 and 3 times a week with a lot of energy behind this, because they're trying to get together a CPC application for Thanksgiving. So I hear your concerns on both topics. I'm going to discuss the other one in 1 second, but Conservation Commission expects that they will come in on in 2 weeks with a proposal that's ready to go to CPC, and that we likely will endorse it. So I think I speak for the rest of the Conservation Commission that we feel comfortable that the way they're going forward with this is going to be productive. But yes, we hear that. As far as
Wait, Jenny, I just want to say, if that's what's being planned, that sounds good. My last conversation with one of the principals was Monday, so it sounds like some improvement if on Tuesday, but I just would like to see it happen, that's all.
yeah, I would like to see it happen too, but I would like to see it happen in a way. I mean, Nate can't do it. He doesn't have the manpower. Right. As far as public participation, I see we have Ginia here today. We had robust participation in our first few meetings in March. I have mentioned several times that comments are more than welcome to come into me or the conservation office. I don't know. You don't have the walk by conversations, but people have found me and made their positions known in a number of ways. And I continue to welcome as much participation as anybody wants to give, but I do think that, you know, conservation put this task force together, gave us our charge, and then COVID came along, and some priorities, I think, changed. So again, I say to anybody who's watching this, and please, it'll be reflected in the minutes, please come and talk to us, or, you know, on these meetings, or contact the office. John.
Ginny, I know that, you know, we're rounded out with our membership in the charge, and that is what it is. You're going to report in, but I think, you know, think about Phil's comments, and, you know, you owe the commission a report. You know, you can, if there's a minority position on some of the stuff when you get down to voting some of the stuff, like, do you guys want to explain that? You can, right? We can.
Sure, because
I don't want to, if someone is in the minority on a particular implementation action, right? We could describe that.
And I would think that in our narrative, that we would discuss some of the conversations that we had in public comment. And I mean, it was more than public comment. They were basically open communication with whoever was at the meetings.
I hope the public, I mean, it looks like we have one attendee, and that's great. So hopefully they'll continue to get used to this remote platform, but we can, I think the report needs to, and should include all the stuff that we discussed,
Mm-hmm.
and whether some of those things made your implementation list or not. That's that report piece that I think I could use some help
Right.
on
And
when we get to it.
we can also definitely include in our appendix any written communications that we've received, because I think that's good background information. So the Shellfish and Waterways letters, letters from OPC, not OPC, but OCT. Who else did we hear from? I think we heard from Open Space at one point, did we? Or
Yes.
was that just a private conversation? Maybe that was.
No, I think there is stuff from.
I think there's a letter from Open Space. But yes, I think that the way to do this is to make it as transparent as possible, and to, given the restrictions that we have in communicating right now, and to give the Conservation Commission a full picture of what we've been doing. Before I do anything else, could I just, and Phil was answering a question on whether or not the schedule I sort of threw out there was reasonable or not. And Kayleen, I did not hear from you.
For the,
The
for
idea
what?
that we would at our next meeting, hopefully have a site visit, come
Yeah.
back, maybe and make some firm decisions about what we were going to go forward recommending, so that we could start to put together the list of land uses, the implementation, and then start to look over the next few weeks at the site plan.
Yep. That's,
Okay.
Great.
I'm gonna stop right there for a minute, if that's okay. And ask Ginny if she has a comment, because so can we bring Ginny in? I think Ginny, you're here. Or where'd she go? Here you are. Ginny, are you here? If you are, you're muted.
Do you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Do you have any comments on what we've been discussing?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to do that. And I'm sorry that I didn't get on the site. It took me 20 or 25 minutes to get on the site.
Oh dear.
Sorry for that. So I only came in when John was discussing the objectives.
Okay, but I think you've been following along and you sort of have
Yes.
an idea of what's been happening.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to underscore what Phil's comment about being more inclusive. I know that the selection of the committee members was luck of the draw, and so it just happened that way, and that's what we have to work with. But I think that there are more people. I know Bob Perry wants to be involved, and he didn't find out about the meeting until this morning. And myself, I only found out a couple days ago because we weren't recontacted regarding it. And I know it's on the website. Thank you, John. But however, I find that if you use your smartphone to get on your website, that information is not available when you're seeing it through a smartphone.
Virginia, can I interrupt for a minute? For you and Bob Perry and all of the people who are interested, you can put an alert on through the website so that the minute the agenda comes up, it goes to your phone.
Yes, thank you. Previously in the spring, I was on that, but I will recheck that.
Okay.
So I think that there are a lot more people, including the shell fishermen, that would like to have an opportunity for an input. And I think it's exceedingly important, having been involved, as you know, Ginny, in the wastewater and in the Lonnie's Pond and so forth, that the shellfish men represent, it's their income, it's their livelihood, it's what the town is about. And I feel very committed that when all taxpayers pay $500,000 for a property, that is you're trying to do, invite everyone to be able to participate or welcome their opinions. I would like to ask, was anything ever put in the newspaper, like in a letter to the editor or something like that, inviting people or 501c3 groups to offer any thoughts or possible relationships with that location? Was anything ever put in the paper? A call out, sort of?
Not by the task force.
Okay, I would think that might be a good PR, if not a good all-round thing to do, because all the taxpayers paid for it. So to notify them that there is a task force, and B, that any comments that they have would be welcomed. I think that would be an important thing to do before there's a presentation to the CONSCOM. I think the input should be way up front. I noticed the difference between table 1 and table 2, that the there seemed to be an immediate deletion of anything that included the use of the building, and I was sorry to see that. I think that it would be important to still keep in there a satellite office for water activities, whatever those activities might be, learning lessons, educational things, and so forth, but to keep it in there. I see no reason to really knock anything out at this point. There can be preferences shown, but not to knock it out. I noticed that the beach area, beaching is listed here. Yesterday around this time, the beach area was 9 feet by 19 feet. That's a very small area to be considered that it should have prime importance in your ranking system. With current COVID, you could only have 2 people ever allowed on the beach. Trail walking, to me, it's less than 50 steps between the car and the beach. So to put those in a higher priority than something like aquaculture or shellfish propagation or boating instruction, I think is, I think it should be reconsidered what the ranking on that is. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. I think it's exceedingly important to put the possibility of an upweller in there, whether it's now 5 years, 10 years, or so forth. But this is the livelihood of people in Orleans, and it saves the town a lot of money. They spend $18,000 or so every year buying seed. That would be eliminated if they were spending that amount of money in their upwellers and developing the shellfish and the spat of things that they actually needed to have at that particular time frame, according to what's going on in the habitats. I think to keep encouraging the coastal restoration, I know that the PBA didn't get the second grant, but maybe they will after COVID and things like that. And it would seem to me that the building, the presence of a building or an office for monitoring and observation, as Mr. Wilkinson said, so that's why I think it would be good to keep that in there, even if it doesn't become utilized, but to keep it in there so that we're open to the many uses of it. There was a question that Kayleen had regarding the running costs. She wanted a contrast between them. The running cost, as I had given you the material on in the first meeting, is $204 a month for water and electric combined. And I was covering the years, something like 96, it was 17 years covered to come up with that. Versus the demolition of, I know Russ provided a price of 18,000 or 15,000 plus 8,000. I understand from Bob Perry that the estimate for 2 buildings on their property there is 67,000 for 2 small teeny buildings. So I think that the estimate of 15 might be a little on the low side. I would think, but maybe you've already done this, Jenny, that whatever is being presented is presented in relationship to the gift that OPC will shortly have. So it's 141, but it's 141 plus that whole neighborhood with picnic and hiking and all of those.
Communication, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yes, it was September 99 to March 2016 that I did the estimates from the town budget. There was concern about the viewing deck and the ramp. At the time that it was built by the Gilmores, it was engineered to take that weight and be used for viewing. So I don't think there needs to be undue concern about whether it can take the weight of people there, because that's what it was designed for when the house was done. And I think I appreciate this amount of time, and I think that covers what I'd noticed and wanted to comment on.
Great.
But
Thank you so much for your comments, Ginnia, and keep them coming. Yes, indeed. It's helpful.
Ginny, I don't know if you could or John can meet personally with Bob Perry, but he doesn't know how to do Zoom. So he said, I'm just the kind of in-person guy. But he started off meeting with us, so I don't know if either of you could do John, I think he called into your office twice today. So I don't know if either one of you could give him any personal time, 6 feet apart, you know, in the conference room there or something, whatever.
I could do it. I don't go in buildings.
Okay.
I don't know, I've been in and out, but Christina's here all day and we have had no messages from Bob, but I know how to get in touch with him and he, me. So, if the chair directs me to reach out to Bob, I'm happy to do so.
Okay. The email that your office had for him was incorrect. It was the email for someone in Dennis. And so Christina, I gave her the correct email and she sent him out some documents.
Okay.
The same group she sent me.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ginia.
Thank you for hearing me.
Okay. We're going to go to other business, and under other business, we are going to discuss these 2 site plans that Russ put together for us. Thank you, Russ. Do you want to talk about them for a few minutes?
Well, they were just a couple of conceptual ideas. I know that last time we talked about fitting parking in there, and I was kind of curious as to how that would work. So as you can see, one plan has the building, one plan doesn't. The parking stays at the same location. You can actually add a space to both of those if you want. There might be some additional regrading. This is the one with the building. The lower parking area fits within the existing gravel parking that's there. And I was thinking that you could actually extend that so you could back a trailer into it if that's an idea that we want to do. The kayak rack would be, my conception of the kayak rack would be 2 4x4s that are mounted on posts, and the kayak racks rest right on those, as opposed to a rack style structure. Picnic tables spread out. The fence would be reconfigured so that you wouldn't be headed towards people out of the marsh. The other side pretty much where it is now. The path that goes through the marsh is going to be abandoned. The existing paths would just be maintained, and there'd be the grading would exist as is. The other one without the building, there would be some regrading that would be done, so it would slope gradually down towards the water, towards the edge of the sedge.
Terrific.
And I was thinking along the lines of the storage and all that as you walk down where the dinghies are stored now, and I think our site visit will be beneficial for this, is maintain that. It's a nice little beach area, but maintain that as the dinghy storage, and then going to the west, develop that, not really develop it, but sort of utilize that as a beaching area. I've noticed a couple times when I've walked down, that's where everybody gravitates to anyway. High water, you don't have a lot of beach area, but other tides you can, and it then gives the dinghies, the owners of the dinghies, that better access, and from there they can utilize it more beneficially.
So we could take a look at that when we go out and see if there's enough room to get all the dinghies out of the marsh.
So these are just a couple ideas that I started playing around with.
Okay, I'd love to get those dinghies out of the marsh someday. But I think that's helpful. I hadn't thought about, I was thinking about parking as parallel to the street, not perpendicular.
I was surprised when I started drafting it, how it fits in. You can do it this way. And the other benefit of bringing them in like this is you can get more cars in, and it also stops people from parking parallel to the road. You'd be blocking.
Right. No, that was interesting to me. Thank you for doing that. That's helpful. So if everybody could bring their, if we do the site visit in 2 weeks, if everybody could bring their site plans, that would be great. Other comments from the task force? John? No? Nothing?
Just Russ, the bike rack or bike racks.
I forgot those.
Okay, where would they be? I mean, would
Again,
that take that one of the parking places?
somewhere near where the kayak rack is. What I'm thinking is that that area would be developed, you'd develop into a gravel area for the kayak storage and for bike racks. So I didn't get too elaborate with it. So basically the parking area that's there now, you would convert some of it into actual parking spaces, and then the rest of it you could develop it in for storage purposes.
Interesting.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, so then we have, you have the historical significance piece that was distributed. And I guess all we have left is the minutes from our last meeting. I had no revisions or additions. Does anyone else? Seeing and hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move approval.
Okay, Jack, second.
I second.
Okay, Russ. So we have a motion by Jack, a second by Russ. All those in favor? Ginny, aye. Jack,
Jack, aye.
Russ,
Aye.
Phil,
Phil, I.
and Kayleen.
Aye.
It's 5-0-0. And if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Jack, second.
Second.
Kayleen, okay, motion by Jack, second by Kayleen. All those in favor, Ginny, aye. Jack,
Jack, aye.
okay, Russ,
Russ, aye.
Bill,
Phil, I.
and Kayleen.
Aye.
And so we are adjourned.